Alrighty, I think we are ready to make a start. Obviously, this is a little bit of a test run we're using tonight for a new piece of software that we discovered during the week for this exact webinar reasons and online meeting reasons. At the moment, we think it's a little bit more user-friendly software, a little bit more simple in its application, and for us, it seems to be a program that is Prezi friendly, which means a lot to us because, as you know, it's our preferred presenting platform, and being able to hopefully present on this will be a much better thing. So hence why tonight, originally we sort of said tonight we're going to let this one pass, but then we decided we might as well take advantage of our time and see how we go with running a semi type of practice run using Zoom. The great thing is what we've discovered is most of the features from Zoom are actually free, and we love the fact that we keep on presenting to you guys wonderful software options that will make you better, more effective trainers that have great free versions and options. And Zoom seems to be no different, even though we'll end up taking up, we believe, a paid option. So tonight's subject, I'll do the proper intro and we'll get it going. So tonight's subject is BSBCMM401A Make a Presentation. Pretty self-explanatory, this one. I don't think I even bothered to put in the unit descriptor. This subject dovetails perfectly into the group-based learning unit of competence, because obviously to train groups, you're going to be in a classroom environment most likely, or some sort of environment where you as a presenter will be presenting off some sort of presentation material to a group of people. So getting your head around how to make a great presentation, how to train yourself to be as good a presenter as you possibly can be, is obviously an important step in your evolution, moving from in-car training into classroom training, or industry-based training into classroom training, and vice versa, the other way around. And let's not forget that presenting and doing presentations is a part of a lot of people's working lives, especially within companies. And when you think of project managers and people that need to pitch ideas to teams and boards and whatever the case may be, what we do know is that in sales teams and all that kind of stuff, there's use for presentations actually in the workplace continuously. I noticed, funny enough, I was away for the last couple of days and we're staying in at Crown Casino, and we're overlooking one of the buildings. We're up high and we're overlooking an office block. And I couldn't help but notice through the windows that there was about on 3 levels, there was all these different meeting rooms. And all day, every day, I noticed that different groups were coming in and out using presenting material, which was kind of ironic given that this was the next subject on our TAE list to teach. So yeah, this subject perfectly dovetails into group-based learning. Tonight, we're going to go through most likely not the whole presentation, but at least a couple of the main points. This actual presentation has been designed with a conversational approach. So the great thing about Prezi, again, is that here in front of us on the screen, you have around about 5 different topics, and you would be able to click on each individual topic as you liked and go through that bubble of information, so to speak, and then come back out and then choose your own pathway again. So certainly this presentation was designed not to be linear. And if I'd been teaching you in a group, I would have said to you, here are our main topics: presenting yourself, planning, delivery, challenges, and evaluation. And I'll put it to you, this group, that what would you like to start with? And I would allow the group to within reason, choose their own adventure, so to speak, or choose the pathway of the information that you'd like. Tonight, we'll take a little bit more of a linear approach. We'll start with presenting yourself, and we'll take it through there and probably move into planning. And depending on how we go with time, we may park it there, or we may move into delivery after that. Presenting yourself. So as it says here, welcome to this BSBCMM401A presentation. It is designed as a choose your own pathway presentation. You do not have to follow the linear approach to the slides below. Each major bubble on the title screen is a subject unto itself. You are free to choose the topics, just make sure you visit them all. This first topic is all about preparing you for presenting. So working on yourself, understanding some of the challenges you're going to face as an individual, getting up and presenting in front of people, and how to overcome that and successfully put in place management approaches. Introduction. Presentations have become an integral part of almost every job. Across all types of industries and businesses, presentations are not just an accepted and routine method of transferring information, but also a pivotal part of measuring and evaluating your work performance. Presenting yourself, this section is about the first step in making a presentation. It deals with managing nerves, non-verbal communication and posture, using your voice to best advantage, and tips on developing your confidence. You have obviously made the choice to become a trainer. This does not preclude you or protect you from the notion that you may become nervous at the thought of training others publicly. In actual fact, some of the best presenters still become nervous before any presentation. So if we were to isolate the skills you need, what we do know is to be an effective presenter, you will need to learn how to, 1, manage your emotions, 2, develop your confidence and self-belief, 3, how to effectively use your voice, 4, respond to the dress code, and 5, know your material. 6, identify your motivations and intentions, and 7, conduct self-evaluation. Emotions. For some, whenever they think about public speaking, they can suffer from a variety of physical reactions, from red cheeks to butterflies in the stomach. It is actually part of the body's defense mechanism that helps you to prepare and face or escape danger. It's known as our flight or fight response. This natural reaction is not helpful for us presenters. It can make life tough for us. So luckily, that nervous energy can be used and harnessed to make you an effective presenter. I always know myself personally, not so much these days. These days I don't really get nervous at all for presenting, but I know through my sporting life and just my attitude to life was always that within that flight or fight response, I tended to always bring on the fight response. It used to get me fired up and I'd want to rise to the occasion. And certainly when I moved into training, that served me really well, that I took that opportunity to want to, to sort of lift my level of ability to a higher level to make myself do the job as good as I possibly could. And that definitely served me well. Given that I haven't naturally been a flighter, someone who wanted to leave the scene, it would be wrong of me to pretend that I would know that feeling of just wanting to get out of somewhere, because it hasn't tended to be my natural response. But I'm sure that, and I know of plenty of, really good presenters that feel that way. I'm sure she wouldn't like me to talk about it, but probably one of the best presenters I've ever seen in my life is Jess, our first aid trainer. Without a doubt, her natural disposition is just so awesome. I see her, whenever I watch her work, I'm in awe of her ability to do her job. But watching her the first 5 to 10 minutes before she starts training is an absolute, I shouldn't say it's a crack up, but it is quite funny because despite the fact that she's just so awesome at the job, it is amazing to watch how she still starts off or gets a bit nervous before she starts the job. But once she's into it, just her natural ability shines through, and you just see, I love watching how groups just totally get drawn into the way she trains, and just the sincerity that she teaches with, and the pitch in her voice, and how she draws the classes in to hang on every word that she has to deliver. I don't even think I have that capability, and it's just such a natural thing for her. But definitely, if you looked at her flight or fight response before she goes out to teach, sometimes I think she's more flight than fight. But it's amazing then to watch her apply her craft and just do such an amazing job. Negative emotions. So most often, negative emotions arise from the thoughts we have about a particular situation rather than what actually happens in the end. Thoughts give rise to feelings, and if you have negative thoughts about an upcoming event, you'll also start to feel unhappy and uncomfortable about the event. If you can change the thoughts, even slightly, your emotions will also change. So again, thinking about that presenting coming up, that opportunity or that job, if you feel like you're getting really negative about it and starting to get, and obviously very naturally, start to have emotions attributed to that, those thoughts, then even as it says here, even be able to find something within you that will help you slightly change that point of view will help enormously. Because as we know, subconscious mind runs the conscious mind. Conscious mind runs our emotions, and our emotions run our behavior. So if we can harness that thought process of how that thought process into emotion, into behavior, if we can do our best to modify or take control of that, it certainly goes a long way. Self-talk. Self-talk refers to the little voice inside your head that provides a running commentary on your behavior. Since most of us do have some kind of internal critic making personal remarks, the first thing to do is to turn this critic into a coach. And it's so true, turning that doubting voice into the voice that helps you. It is suggested that if you write several small positive statements about your ability to present and you continually read them out, reinforcing positive thoughts before your presentation, you can actually help yourself to mentally prepare. And that could be just one of those awesome little helpful tips that could get you over the line and get you standing up in front of people confidently, despite the fact that you may start each time quite nervous. I'm going to actually break out of this presentation in a few slides to show you another presentation about how to help you prepare for the first time or the early times you start to present. And there's some really helpful hints, and some of it is quite similar to that. Nerves can make your breathing irregular, which itself contributes to increased anxiety. Slow, deep breaths can help calm nerves and ensure blood flow and oxygen to the brain, where it is needed during a presentation. If you need to write a note to yourself about it, don't forget to take at least 5 long, slow breaths before starting to speak. Try not to do it in the middle of the crowd. You might look a bit weird. And don't do it to the point where you break into hyperventilation. Not a good look. Going up dizzy could be interpreted as you've had a couple of drinks out the back. This will also make sure that you don't rush your first words too much, as speakers usually speed up when they're nervous. Posture. The way a presenter stands or sits can affect the mood of the audience. A relaxed pose can help the audience feel calm and responsive. If a presenter has their arms crossed and tense muscles, the audience is more likely to feel anxious and unsettled. Posture is central consideration. Is a central consideration when trying to gain and maintain the attention and trust of your audience. I always remember one of the first times I started training at TAFE. The head trainer of the time that had got myself and Alex in to start working on the program, he threw me into the deep end. He said, "Oh, I've got this table. Can you take the guys through it?" And he walked out the room. And it was without a doubt a deliberate ploy. But it was so funny that as I was trying to find this table and actually work out what he was hoping for me to talk about within this table, because I had no idea, I could feel myself trying to physically hide behind the screen of this little baby laptop computer. And it got to the point where I went, you know what? I think I've almost tried to shrink myself behind this computer, that I went, no, enough is enough. The flight or fight came out of me, and I went, nah, it's time to sort of fight. And instead I picked a topic that I knew a lot about, which was going to sort of tie into what the head trainer wanted me to talk about, but it was within my comfort zone. And whether he liked it or not, I was able to then turn the whole situation around. All of a sudden, I became strong in my physical presence. I was up in front of the whiteboard. I was writing notes. I had people toing and throwing with me in conversation with the content that I was presenting to them. And it was only 3, 4, 5 minutes before that I dead set was trying to shrink into oblivion behind this teeny little screen, because I was completely lost at what he wanted and what we wanted, and I was outside my comfort zone. So it is amazing that everyone was silent in the room. My body language was quite clear that I didn't want to talk to them and I didn't want anyone to talk to me. Yet 4 or 5 minutes later, there I was, really strong posture in the classroom, driving the bus, everyone feeding off that. So which one would you prefer to be? I know in that particular day that the picture on the left of the presenter, that was definitely me in front of the computer. And then 4 to 5 minutes later, I was much more like the person on the right-hand side. I'm going to bust out of this presentation for the moment and go to another one that's only got 10, I think it's only got about 10, 11 slides, which again reinforces some of the things that you can do to make yourself more confident with presenting. This is another Prezi presentation, guys. This one is a presentation that was given to us for free. Again, being a corporate member of Prezi, you get awesome support. I've got a whole heap of webinars that I want to share with you guys on the portal. And there's all these great templates that you can actually use and modify for yourself. This is probably using Prezi a lot better than what we do and how Prezi kind of works at its best. You'll constantly see through this short presentation how the use of pictures, zooming, and content is able to provide an overall narrative of the subject whilst channeling in on individual points. And it's really is, you know, Prezi 101 and what makes Prezi great. So it's known as the rehearsal regime that every great presenter should know. 16 slides, that's all it has. But already you have this thing about there's a presenter actually presenting it. It's awesome. But anyway, I'll go through it. Start alone. You've written your talking points. Now it's time to say them out loud. Do this first by yourself without stopping when you mess up. So a great thing to do, and I always used to do this when I first created a presentation, I would always go about and make sure that I practiced it out loud, because practicing it in your head is a totally different experience to practicing it out loud. Stand in front of a mirror and try, and this can be difficult, but it allows you to focus on the words that you're saying. Practice your presentation alone at least 5 times before inviting friends to listen in, and try to memorize it in its entirety. And that was something that I did naturally when I went off to driver trainer school. On the second day of the course, my brother and I got offered a job on a post-license course where we'd end up doing presenting. Normally you had to work there for years and years and years and be a salty old soul before you ever got allowed to do the presenting. I was lucky enough to be offered a presenter's position within a very short amount of time. I was about 30 years younger than anyone else working on that course, dead set honest, to truth. And the first time they offered me the presenting role, and I'd watched other people trying to do the job, and I used to get up there nervously and read in front of everyone, and I just knew that was the last thing I ever wanted to do. So the night before, the Friday night before working on this program on the Saturday, I went through that presentation, and I would have gone through it about 5 to 6 times, but by the time I went to bed, I could actually say that whole morning's presentation virtually by memory. And then that way, that allowed me to walk into that room for the first time that next Saturday, completely and utterly confident in my ability, and I felt like I knew the content and the topic really well, and yeah, took off from there, and there was no looking back from that point, without a doubt. I love how Prezi allows you to zoom in on a topic and then come back out for an overall content view, and then come back into the next point. Choose your friends wisely. Giving a presentation is serious business, and you want the most honest feedback possible. When choosing friends or co-workers that will give you feedback, be sure to select people that will give you a real critique and not sugar-coated positivity. Likewise, you don't want the class clown in there who feels like your serious practice environment is actually an environment for them to be to put on a show for themselves. Because you have a group of people around. So yeah, choose your people wisely. You want people to be honest, and at the same time, you don't want the person who feels like it's an opportunity for them to distract from what you're trying to achieve. Dress the part. How cool is that? Now that you're ready to give your presentation in front of actual people, put on the exact clothes that you'll wear the day of your talk. You want to feel as though you are truly in front of a crowd, not something you can achieve in your pajamas. break out the video camera. Assemble your mock audience and set up your phone as a camera in the corner. Run through your entire presentation and then go back later to critique yourself. Great tips, guys. Listen to the audio only. Listening to the audio alone is as important as watching yourself. Try to vary the emotional inflections in your voice as you perfect the content. This will help keep your audience interested. And that is a great tip. And I know when I go back and sometimes listen to the audio of our presentations, I get so angry and frustrated at myself. And it is amazing the difference between watching a presentation or watching someone present and move compared to just listening to the audio. You really get to understand where you should be changing your inflection and the tone of your voice and the volume levels of your voice even to get the most effective points across at the most important points of your presentation. Go mobile. So you can download your Prezi onto your phone or tablet and carry it with you everywhere so you can use any spare moment to practice. And that is a great feature of Prezi, and it's something that we don't really use. It's called download a portable Prezi. So it actually allows you to download your Prezi onto your device. It actually somehow doesn't use very much memory at all on your phone, yet your whole Prezi is there, and quite often Prezis are quite a large file, but somehow portable Prezis squashes that information down into a very small, usable presentation material that you can, like I said, you can use on your phone, and you won't really use much hard disk space, and you can practice at any moment in time. Practice until it's muscle memory. While you're still in the early stages of rehearsing, the key is to run through your presentation as much as you can. Try to get to the point where you're able to list off your main points without even thinking about them. So important, so helpful. Number 8, do a dry run on stage, or at least in the room. Or at least in the room. When you get closer to your speech date, try to participate in the same location where you'll be giving your presentation. And then that's just a bit of advertising. And that's just a helpful little freebie Prezi that we're given. The template, you can see the main template in the background is a free template. And then the guys obviously put in that one screen with some fade in and fade out information. Yeah, again, Prezi at its sort of, not at its finest, but it's certainly a really effective way that Prezi can work, and it's a good one. Back to our one. So to move on, and I guess to even move on from that information and tie it into what we've already been talking about, to get a well-balanced position for presenting, stand on the floor with your feet about the same distance apart as your shoulders. Roll back and forward from the heel to toe slowly until you find a nice point of balance where you do feel comfortable, and that is your center of gravity. Stop in that position and relax your shoulders. Make sure your head is resting centrally without twisting or craning so you can see straight ahead. And just soften your knees a little bit, just slightly without sort of bending them so you don't look ridiculous, but certainly having a really comfortable, positive posture will allow you to get into your presentation, and just as you're getting into it and you're nailing it and you're really enjoying it, it'll be coming to an end before you know it. Voice. So the presenter's main tool is their voice. It is not just a tool, but also an instrument, and as such, you need to be aware of how it sounds to others and how to use it to best effect. The way you hear your voice is different from how other people experience it. When you speak, what you hear is affected by how the sound resonates within your head, as well as the sound of your voice being different. You often don't notice habits of speech and gesture that other people might notice when you speak, such as saying or like. I never realized how much I can say until I go through these presentations. And as I say before, it drives me absolute nuts. And likewise, if you get to watch yourself with video, it's amazing how often you can repeat certain hand gestures. Without a doubt, while I'm presenting these presentations, these webinars to you guys, it's amazing how much hand movement's going on, like I'm actually presenting in a classroom. So we recommend that you tape yourself and listen back to it. Reflect on what you've heard and ask yourself, how can I make this better? Which is obviously what the other presentation was sort of reinforcing. Pitch. Pitch refers to the note or the intonation of the voice. When a voice is referred to as being high or low, this refers to its pitch. Men have lower pitched voices than women do, and their voices can carry further and sound more authoritative. Lower pitched voices can reach to the back of the room without as much effort or deliberate volume. Being nervous generally raises the pitch and makes the voice harder to hear. Breathing and relaxation can reduce this effect. Tone. Tone refers to the mood that is conveyed through the voice. If you're an expert on a topic or are briefing people, you need to be careful not to slip into an intimidating or patronizing tone that alienates the listeners immediately. A nervous tone communicates anxiety to the audience and makes them restless, while a very restful, soothing tone of voice can send them to sleep. The kind is to be informative, light, and professional, which takes practice. And it is. The key is to try to, to be as relaxed and restful, but not too laid back, and at the same time trying to avoid that high pitch. It's amazing. Some of the presenters we get from one of the government agencies as a part of the driver training network. It's amazing. Some of them are very monotonal, and it's amazing how quickly that can turn off people from actually wanting to listen to some really important information, but just because it's not delivered in the right tone or with the right, not just tone, but inflection and all the other things we've just talked about, it's amazing how quickly the crowd turns off. Recording your presentations as part of your preparation and asking friends and colleagues for feedback will help you identify your default tones and work to change them if they are off track. Pace. Pace refers to the speed of the delivery. Listeners need longer than readers to take in information, and nervous speakers often speed up their delivery. Or if they see the audience drifting off, they try to get through the material faster. And this just leads to even more non-comprehension. It is better to stop and ask questions to break up the delivery than to speed up. Varying the pace deliberately can also be used to break up the material. Sometimes to emphasize a point, a slower delivery is called for, with pauses for the audience to take in the full importance of the point. Other times when there is excitement in the narrative or anecdote, the speed can increase momentarily. And it's amazing how, as you get confidence and as you get to really know your material, and when, especially the material that you've delivered or you've created, and you know the points that you really want to emphasize, it's amazing how you'll hopefully naturally work your tone and your pace, especially those points where you just say something and leave a little bit of silence. It's amazing how short a silence it takes to make a point or to give an audience time to reflect a little bit. And likewise, it's amazing that if you see people starting to nod off a little bit, and I know when I first started, sometimes when you felt like you're losing the audience a bit, you'd want to kind of get through it even quicker, but it's not the case. You need to stop and you actually start to need to ask some questions and bring it back to a much more participatory approach and that conversational approach. So, and asking questions can also get a little bit of buy-in back from your students, and also bring about a sense of responsibility that, hey, I'm up here delivering some information to you. All I'm asking you to do is listen and take on this information. However, to think that any group can just survive on a one-way communication process is probably a little bit unrealistic. So to have that buy-in, to have that mutual respect for one another, you want to get back some information from them. So as you can see them nodding off, ask them some questions. It's nothing like, in some ways, being asked the question from a presenter and not knowing anything because you'd stop listening to get people back on that whole concentration level. But again, you're trying to avoid a situation where you'd rob them of their dignity or anything like that. Volume and projection. While it's important that the audience can hear everything you say, this does not mean that shouting is necessary. You need to use the voice the way an actor does and project it to the back of the room using the outgoing breath. Speaking on the vocal cords rather than using the breath will wear the voice out, and you may get hoarse. It is also tiring for the audience to listen to. And it's just that constant strained voice. Dress code. Your audience will be looking at you, so your personal grooming and presentation will be especially important. Some questions to consider are, how do you want others to view you? What is your personal grooming like? Most organisations will have their own dress code. Know your material. A strong knowledge of your subject matter is always the basis for a presentation, and some research or review of your content may be required. In workplace situations, you'll usually be invited to present on a topic which you know more about than the audience. But making sure you are thoroughly prepared and up to date and having your content is just so important. It really is. Intention and motivation. Your intention can affect your mood and make you conscious of the remarks you make and the way you communicate your message. For example, Ros Townsend, in her book, The Presenter Within, says that her relationship to the audience is as important to her. Her intentions are that each member of the audience is respected and valued. She adds that to their body of knowledge, and she moves the organisation forward, and she does no harm. Think about that for a moment. She's a professional presenter. She goes into workplaces, and her ethos, her I guess, guiding light is that each member of the audience is respected and valued. She adds to their body of knowledge. She moves the organisation forward, and she does no harm. If that can be a little bit of a guiding principle to anything that you do, you're going to be well and truly on the right foot. So 5 tips to remember. Presentation skills can be learned. You don't have to be a natural at it, and you will get better at it over time. And if you do the right thing by yourself and you invest in yourself and practice and give yourself a chance to practice, then you will get better at it. Presentation skills can be learned. 2, emotions can be managed. And again, when you do the above, that logically follows on. The more confident you are, the better you're going to be at managing your emotions. The management of emotions and the confidence grows with you doing the right thing by yourself, and that is practicing and giving yourself time to get to be the best at it that you possibly can be. Personal style sends a message, and that's that whole thing where when you send a message with that personal belief inside you, it's a much more it's a topic much more easily received from your audience, and because you believe in what you're saying, your audience is more likely to believe in what you're saying as well. Knowing your material is vital, and your intentions are important. Again, being the moment you don't believe in your content, you do not have the best intentions, people see through that pretty quickly. So there are 5 great tips to remember. You keep that in the back of your mind, and again, you will do a fantastic job. Self-evaluation. So even though we've got a whole topic on self-evaluation, this is just a short synopsis of it. So the success of your presentation is most effectively judged by asking for the responses from your audience. This means that you will need to evaluate your own performances and seek feedback regularly from others in order to develop your skills and apply the lessons to learn for your next presentation. Mistakes will be made. They're unavoidable, no matter how well prepared you are, and they are a vital part of the learning process. Cool. So that's the end of that first topic, guys. I'm just going to check the time for a moment and see how we're traveling. It's not too bad. Planning. Planning is essential to the success of your presentation. As we have covered the importance of planning within the assessment context previously, I'll keep this section as brief as possible. However, you can see several slides in there, so we'll try our best. Planning. Preparing thoroughly can prevent difficult situations. Not only what is going to be said and shown, but organisational details such as room bookings and setup need to be carefully considered and factored into preparation time. Some aspects are beyond your control, such as a power failure, but the aspects that can be managed should be managed. In order to plan and prepare a presentation, you must be able to use mind maps, develop a plan including an introduction, body and conclusion, use metaphor, analogies and narratives, give and receive feedback, create a script or notes, and consider all factors that may affect the presentation. Matter, manner, and method. When delivering a presentation, it is often useful to follow the 3 M's to make your presentation effective. This refers to the speaker using matter, manner, and method. Matter refers to the content of their presentation. Manner is the physical manner of the presentation and covers many of the points raised in section 1. And method means the structure or organisation of the argument. For a presentation to be successful, all 3 must be given equal attention. Planning focuses on these 3 elements: matter, manner, and method. So why plan? Even the most natural presenters usually spend a lot of time planning and practicing their presentations. In addition, a presentation has to have a purpose and an outcome. While presenting is easy for some, getting the right message across isn't always so easy. So planning has the following benefits. You'll feel more confident. Your presentation will more likely be focused on the audience. You're able to deliver a clear presentation with explicit goals. You'll stick to the topic. Both you and the audience are clear about the next step at each stage of your presentation. So while it is possible to over-prepare when you're starting out, too much preparation is always better than too little. So prepare yourself, manner. Prepare your content, the matter. And prepare your aids, which is the method. Prepare yourself, manner. Prepare your content, matter. Prepare your aids, method. Manner, matter, method. Outcome and purpose. Being able to state the purpose of your presentation means you'll be able to decide what content to include. It will help you to include only the factors that support the outcome and emphasize the most important points. Secondly, you'll be able to state the intended outcome to your audience. This will make the audience more settled. They'll be more likely to relax and be able to listen if they are not worrying about what they are supposed to be doing with the information you are giving them. Audience concentrate better when they know where you are going with an idea and what the intended destination will be. This has been covered comprehensively in the previous group-based learning unit. So this is that, guys, the whole principles of adult education that we've talked about, and how, especially early on to any topic, that we introduce it and we remind time-poor adults why they're there, what the benefit of their participation is, and how it will help them get to their end goal, whatever that may be, whether that's going all the way back to Maslow's hierarchy, where we talk about meeting those fundamental needs, or whether it's some of the other theories that we've covered over the past few weeks. Audience. Knowing your audience is a must in a successful presentation. You need to consider your audience's education, skills, goals, needs, previous training, and role within the organisation. You should be able to answer the following questions about them and take into account the WIFM principle. This stands for what's in it for me, and it's the predominant concern of most people attending a presentation. And again, I said it last slide, I'll say it again, the principles of adult learning are all being ticked off with this information. It's just being really packaged up and delivered in a different message, but it really harks back to the principles of adult education. So, what's in it for your audience? What do they want to know or be able to do at the end of your presentation? What do they already know? What do they need to know about you? What mood are they most likely going to be in? And what are their positions within the organisation? And it's amazing how much those questions can affect the success of your presentations. There's nothing worse when you head into a presentation really keen and believing in your message, only to find that the group don't really want to be there. They'd rather be somewhere else. They've probably got work to do, or they don't see any need for this sort of training. So it becomes really clear early on that you need to kick in that stuff, the principles of adult education, or as they say here, what's in it for your audience. You need to, with good connected learning and meaning, or good connected meaning, remind them of why they're there and what's in it for them. So some of these answers may be guesswork, but try to think about it from an audience member's point of view. This will shift the focus away from your concerns about your own style or nerves and put the spotlight on the reason for the presentation, the people who are receiving it. Physical and cultural factors. Cultural background can seriously affect your approach. For example, if you are aware that some cultures find direct eye contact aggressive and impolite, you may have to revise your usual approach. Doing some research on your audience's likely interests, possible biases, and demographic is vital. And for anyone who's done our Cert 4 driver training, the old work in a socially diverse environment subject, we cover that in great detail because it's just been such a cornerstone of our business that if you've already been a student of ours, I'm thinking that you'd have a good understanding of that particular topic. Matching audience and purpose. The combination of well-considered purpose, topic, and audience creates a focus for the presentation. This means that the time spent planning and researching will also be focused and reduce wasted effort. Once you're clear about what the purpose of your presentation is and who the audience is, you can begin to assemble your ideas. Collecting ideas. A useful method of getting all your ideas together is with a mind map. A mind map is a visual thinking and planning tool that helps you create a map of your thoughts on the page. It is also a useful technique within a presentation if you're required to collect group ideas about a topic or facilitate planning exercise. I got to admit, I used a good old-fashioned mind map a week or two ago in preparation for a course. Yeah, absolutely used it. I'd sort of forgotten about mind mapping and exactly did this. Had my central point and started branching out, and it was great. It just really got me back on task and focus with what I was trying to achieve. And I even did it a week or two ago with just kind of organizing the main part of my day and just getting a little bit more effective time management out of my day. That using a mind map was awesome. It really helped me organize and gave me some focus. So applying a structure. No matter how long or short a presentation may be, it needs to be well structured. Most talks have an introduction, which mentions the main points, a body, which expands upon the main points, and a conclusion that summarizes them. From a simple planning approach, tell the audience what they're going to what you are going to tell them what you are, and then tell them what you've told them. So obviously these days we've probably moved a little bit down or a little bit further along with our approach to presentations. It still is essentially the same thing. So even though you're starting to hear us talk about the conversational approach to presentations and how it can be much more participatory, it still is framed though in that same method that we're still going to tell them this is what we're going to learn about today. You're still going to tell them whatever that is, but you're actually going to allow them a little bit more of a self-choice approach to that information. So a little bit more participatory, giving them the chance to prioritize what they want to learn. Sometimes, conversational approach to training obviously has its limits once you start to get too big a group, because obviously too many people trying to say what they want to learn can fall apart at the seams a little bit. Smaller groups that are maybe all from the same work area should have most likely very common themes in what they need to learn. So if you've got 3 or 4 topics or 5 or 6 topics, so to speak, allowing them a little bit of freedom and to let them draw on their commonality of not fear or learning requirement or whatever the case may be or concern certainly helps them, but you're still going to be telling them in the end. And then you're still going to have a conclusion that at the end of them, you're going to tell them what you told them. And for us, we've probably gone along the evolution stream now to really, for us, that's that point where we talk about that connected meaning or that connected learning. So rather than reminding them, I've told you this because you needed to know that, this is where we now use those open questions where we get them to reflect on why it has been important for them to participate in that day and listen to what you've told them, and also get them to tell you why it's important that they take away what you've taught them and they apply it, and how that will allow them to, in the end, reach their goals. And whether those goals even extend beyond the workplace or beyond the course, that's what that connected meaning is about, that In the end, even though we're telling them what we've told them, we're not kind of doing it in that patronizing fashion, that we're going to allow them to tell us what we've told them. And that allows them to leave with a much more beneficial experience, and a much more effective a much more effective, but they've taken part in a much more effective learning pathway. And certainly the chances of your teaching having a long-term positive effect is greatly enhanced, as we've talked about. So at the end of the day, there's still an introduction, a body, and a summary and conclusion. However, we've just played with those on the edges to bring people more into that process, to once again identify the importance of the principles of adult learning, and how getting participation these days is much more effective. The way people's brains are racing these days with devices and that constant stream of information, we are really fighting these days to have a bit of brain space with people to which we can have effective learning. I was just actually reading a research paper the other day about distracted driving, and it talked about the absolute assault on people's brains these days with social media and devices that are always connected to others, that as a trainer, if you think about it, the information stream that people have access to now compared to what they used to, you have such a limited point in time to be able to get across an effective message that you have to make the best of it, and you have to get them engaged as much as possible. Primacy and recency. Knowing your audience is important, but you must also be aware of audience attention spans. Research has shown how audience attention drops rapidly after the first few minutes and is regained when they are sure the presentation is about to end. This is known as the primacy and recency effect, and severely limits the time you have to make an impression, gain the audience's attention, and get your message across. Beginning and ending. Your opening and closing remarks are especially important given that audiences focus best at the beginning and at the end of a presentation. You can double the impact of your presentation by making your introduction and conclusion memorable. Introduction, open with a bang. This doesn't mean it has to be dramatic, or doesn't have to be a dramatic performance, but something memorable and impressive. Explain what's in it for them. Remember the with them. Identify yourself. Mention the outcome or the objective. Give an overview or an agenda, and explain your policy on questions, whether you want them to interact as you go or wait till the end, or whatever the case may be. Identify your set of agreements. I don't believe in saying rules or whatever, but identifying your set of agreements helps the class definitely run better. And with the conclusion, you need to recap, run a question and answer session, repeat the key points, make a call to action, and end with a bang, again, meaning something that is memorable and impressive. And especially for us these days, using that effective questioning technique where we get people to reflect on what they've learned, what it means to them, how they can apply it, which is your call to action, and how that's going to help them reach the goals or obtain the reason or purpose for them being there in the first place, is mightily important. Adding spice. A presentation can be well designed and structured and yet lack that certain something that makes audience take notice. You could call it adding spice. It is integral to an effective presentation because no matter how sound your planning may be, there needs to be something that keeps an audience alert and listening. It also allows you to repeat the same points in different ways, which means the audience does not feel patronized by your repetition. Some ways of adding spice are to use relevant case studies, stories or illustrations, images, scenarios, research findings, stories and anecdotes, humor, metaphor and analogy. These days, it seems to be YouTube videos, where people use YouTube videos without a doubt. And it definitely does help to add spice. When you look at our youth-based programs, we would probably go no more than 3 to 4 slides without adding video content. And that's been a lesson learned over time. Now, whether that video lasts 3 seconds or 3 minutes, we certainly don't go too many slides without having video content kick back in to keep the spice going and to reinforce the learning. And what we've started to play with is, rather than have groups turn off everything they have with them, we're starting to work on the idea that we get them to turn on whatever they have with them. And as we speak and deliver information, we have links that they can look up to help reinforce what we're talking about. Most young people, especially these days, or even not even young people, I'll do it myself. I'll be listening to someone talk at a conference, and I'll be on my phone or on my computer looking up the topic or reinforcing something or looking up something they've talked about to kind of help really reinforce and make sure that the person knows what they're talking about. It's quite interesting. Even today, ADTAV sent through a email about the hazard perception test that they're updating. As I was going through that, they had some research on them. As I was reading the research on my other screen, because I have a 3-screen computer on my other screen, I was actually doing a search on the author of this research. So if I had been in a public speaking situation and someone had been presenting that research to me, without a doubt, while I was taking in the information of the research, I would have still done that search on the author to give it all a bit of context and to see who wrote it. And funny enough, what I discovered was the guy who wrote the research happened to introduce the hazard perception test in Queensland, and it was able to give me a really interesting sort of overview of the content that I was reading and to identify maybe any possible conflicts of interest. And that's what people do now. You'll be presenting to them and they'll be on their devices looking up stuff that you're talking about anyway. Narrative. Sometimes this flavor or spice can come from using narrative, metaphor or analogy. A narrative refers to a story. Creating narrative does not mean just telling a story or two here and there. Narrative is about structuring the whole presentation in a way that tells a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it takes the audience on a journey. You can add narrative to any subject matter. I think for the guys that were with me a Saturday or two ago, I showed them one of our presentations we use for schools, and the narrative of the presentation was the backdrop photo. And as we went through that presentation covering so many different topics, there were small inserts of information going back to the background picture that created a narrative for me across the whole topic. And it allowed me to start with a bit of a bang and also finish with a bit of a bang. So metaphor and analogy are used in language all the time to make complex or dry ideas sound more interesting and accessible. A metaphor is a figure of speech that likens two things that, because of their similar attributes, saying that that girl has the heart of a lion is a metaphor because the girl doesn't actually have a lion's heart, but it conveys that the girl has a big, strong heart. It is so embedded that it's hard to notice it. If you consciously use metaphor, which is the comparison of one thing to another by creating a picture, you can make your points much more clearer to your audience. An analogy draws a comparison between one thing and another for the purpose of explanation. Much like a metaphor, analogies are used often by politicians to make dry or complicated concepts more interesting and accessible to the public. Previously, there's been discussion about the government's approach to the emissions trading scheme. Senator Barnaby Joyce, in opposition to the plan to tax emissions and then provide a rebate on the tax, draws an analogy. And his analogy was like, that's like the person saying, I'm going to set fire to your house, but don't worry, I'm going to call the fire truck to come out and put it out for you. Why set it on fire in the first place? So there was an analogy that Barnaby used during that point in time in history. Using written materials. Although your eventual aim may be to not use notes at all, it is rare for presenters to do without them. The aim should be to use written notes as a reference rather than reading every word. Notes are different from the plan. Whether you use scripts, word for word, notes, detailed summaries, the postcard method, which is numbered cards with key and prompt words. We try not to be boring. It's as simple as that. A constant challenge we find is encapsulated within this presentation. I write this presentation with a dual purpose. As a presentation, as well as a future learning resource that you can use from our student portal. In actual fact, quite often I write these presentations with the thought that I may never present it to you, and hence why tonight it's written and being presented to you as a script, with me kicking in, providing my own experiences, analogies, and antidotes, and or antidotal evidence, so to speak. But yeah, cool. Rehearsing. Now that you have a plan and some notes, you will need to practice. No matter how many times you may go over the talk in your head, it'll always come out differently. There is no substitute for rehearsal out loud. The talk must be rehearsed to be successful, and usually more than once. Before you rehearse in front of another person, you probably want to rehearse a couple of times on your own so that you can have more confidence before you perform in front of another person. Recording the presentation, depending on what technology you have available, is advisable. Other places to practice include the shower or the car. The more you practice, the more confidence you'll have in your ability to deliver, and that logically means that you'll be able to present without stumbling through sentences. Rehearsal should be done at least once to a practice audience. The practice audience can be a close friend or a colleague who'll be supportive and still give you useful feedback, very much tying into that other presentation from before. Considering all factors, known as CAF. CAF stands for Consider All Factors. When planning, you need to think about factors that may affect your presentation. Some of these are out of your control, such as the weather, but considering can make a difference, such as allowing time for people to remove rain or cold weatherware, cold or wet weatherware, and have somewhere to put it. A lot of our road safety programs have outdoor practical components. Factoring and allowing for weather-based interruptions is an essential part of our planning and contingencies. And another factor is the venue. I know that we do one place where I do a course during the winter every year. We're out at one particular private school during the winter on a Wednesday afternoon. And I kid you not, out of the hundreds of times we've been out there, I reckon it's only not rained about half a dozen times. Venue checklist. We're nearly finished with this presentation tonight, guys. Venue checklist. Whether the venue is in your own work environment or outside it, the area you're presenting needs to be considered. Where there will be outside noise interference such as railways, road or building works, or air conditioners. Will there be interruptions like loudspeaker announcements or a fire drill? Will the audience be able to hear you in the space? What are the acoustics like? Are there tea and coffee facilities? Hell yeah, at Preston. Where are the toilet facilities? You should point out these to your audience at the beginning of the presentation, and where the fire exits are. I think you guys who follow us on Facebook would have seen last year I was doing a presentation. I was out at a school for a couple of days, and on one day we had a massive fire drill that I lost about an hour or so of my presenting time out of. And then the next day they had the intruder alert practice, and I lost another heap of time, and it made it quite difficult for me to actually get through the course. I'd lost so much time through those sorts of things. So when you're facilitating or presenting, you may be the person required to conduct an evacuation. You must always be aware of the nearest exit, the location of extinguishers, and the emergency procedures for that building. Room layout. This is the last bit of information, guys. So one part of your planning regards the room layout. While you'll always not be able to alter this, it is important to identify where you'll be presenting, and if possible, to investigate the space well beforehand. If the furniture can be moved, try to allow for the best way to accommodate your audience, develop the necessary mood and engagement between them and yourself. There are 6 main room layouts. There's the boardroom, which is the oval, the circle, tend to be better for smaller groups. You got the cabaret, which is you up the front and square tables. You got the cabaret with round tables. So you got that, like here we've got the building block effect in reverse. So 3, or the reverse pyramid. You have the horseshoe. We tend to always deliver in the horseshoe. I don't mind the horseshoe because it allows movement for the teacher to access everyone via that central open area. And you can even have horseshoes without table where you just got your chairs. Presentation pre-check. It is always advisable to check the venue and all electronic and other devices on the day of your presentation. A useful tool to ensure that nothing is forgotten on the day is a materials checklist. Technology will quite often be the major source of pain, and we love technology. We try to use technology to its max, but as we have all seen on our courses, there is times when technology can let you down. Cool. All right, guys, I think we're going to park that there for this evening. I'm about to stop the sharing from this screen. If there's any questions, we can certainly open up and do that. But otherwise, thank you for joining us tonight for this impromptu go at using Zoom. It seemed to be pretty good from my end. Hopefully, it was just as enjoyable from your end, and we'll continue to use it. Thank you. I'm going to hit the stop share.
Yep, you're there, Kev.